对不起，对不起啊，对不起，我这个位置给。
大点，眼睛已经对，不行，稍微差一点。
My sister Pam and her husband Peter and my wife Yuna. I want to start off by thanking each of you. Your phone calls, your emails, your texts, your flowers, your food have helped us with the healing process. And we are so grateful of your love and your kindness. Having all of you here today, my father would have been so happy knowing that his closest friends and his family are together, celebrating his life. It has been a very difficult 2 weeks for me and for us. Over the last 2 weeks, my mother, my brother, sister, and our families have been sleeping under the same roof. During this time, we shared stories of our father and reminisced on many of the happy times. And we wanted to share some of those memories today with you. All of our Susu Ayis that are here today would tell us that in the Chinese culture, anyone over 80 has lived a long and full life. So today's service is viewed as a celebration of life. My siblings and our spouses have chosen a venue that is known more for weddings because we want to remember the wonderful memories that our father gave us. Our father has lived a long and full life, and he will be the first to tell you that he has lived a happy life. He would tell you that he's been blessed with a devoted wife who was also his best friend, blessed with children who looked up to him, and with grandchildren who loved him immeasurably. To top it off, he had a group of friends that made his life complete. Friends who he can have an intellectual conversation with, argue with, gossip with, and laugh with. One of the most wonderful things since my father's passing was the stories of my father shared by his friends and loved ones. My mother shared stories that I had never heard before. My sister-in-law or brother-in-law and brother-in-law would also share their experiences about Dad. I want to also thank Chris Zhang Ayi and James Liao Susu and Alfred and Haley Gao Susu Ayi for sharing their stories online. Your stories brought tears to our eyes. I hope some of the stories shared today will spark some experiences you had with my father, and I hope you are willing to share that with us. We have reserved some time later for you to share because my father and my family would be honored to listen to them. I will start first. I spent the last 2 weeks thinking of a story of Dad I wanted to share with you. One story that is so amazing, you will share it with others. One story that is so impactful, you will tell your loved ones and they will tell others. After weeks of thinking, I couldn't remember one big story about my dad and myself. There wasn't one single experience with my father that stood out. Instead, the story I have with my father is made of many small and simple stories. And these small and simple stories have created for me a masterpiece of a father's lessons to life to a son. Rather than telling his son these important lessons, my father lived these values every day and led by example. In the last 2 weeks, I have had the opportunity to reflect on the life of my father, the relationship I had with him, and reminisced on a few life lessons he has taught me. There are many he taught me, but I wanted to share 3 today. Lesson 1, love your life partner. In the last 2 weeks, my cousins Scarlett and Rebecca, Pam and Bruce scoured old pictures of my father and my mother when they were young. In these pictures, my father was handsome, but not very tall. My mother is beautiful and elegant. In their wedding pictures, my mother was about as tall as my father, so we were laughing on what my father saw in my dad, and why did she marry someone so short? At the time, she said, she was engaged to my father at 18. My father was just a little taller than my mother. However, at 18, my mother was still growing, and my father at 27 has already peaked. So my mom had no idea that my father would end up being shorter than her. Fast forward 45 years later, my father suffered a stroke. My brother and sister and I went home 1 week each to help my mother take care of dad. I had the 3rd week after his stroke, and my mom was absolutely exhausted with sleepless nights, caring for my father over the last 2 weeks. However, by the time it was my turn, my father was recovering nicely, so I told my mom to sleep in the other room, and I will sleep with dad. At 3 a.m., he wanted to go to the ER because he wasn't feeling so good. Knowing that my mom was tired and the situation was not a crisis, I told him that I was happy to take him to the hospital, but you will have to let mom rest. So my father nodded and agreed. And the minute we walked out the bedroom, he yelled, "Wei shou!" You see, he couldn't go anywhere without her. My mom got up, but I told her to please go back to sleep. I will take him. My mom just turned around, got a jacket, and said, "Let's go. I can't sleep not knowing if dad is okay." For 54 years, my father and mother cannot be separated from each other. My father cannot live without my mother, and she couldn't live without him. Yesterday, Bruce, my brother, and I went to a Thai restaurant to pick up food for the family. We were waiting for the food, and my brother shared how amazed he was at how well prepared my dad was to ensure that my mom was financially cared for the rest of her life. Despite a big family and a modest income, he spent the last 40 years saving and investing so his wife will never have to worry about finances. Even when my father is gone, he is still caring for my mom. Lesson 2, be a present father and grandfather. I have seen so many movies where a child protagonist receives an award and he is sad because he cannot celebrate it with his father, because his father was too busy at work. After numerous absences, his father finally realizes that his son is more important than the promotion he was working so hard for. So he told his boss, "I quit," and abruptly leaves the most important meeting of his career, jumps in his car, speeds down the freeway, leaves the car in the middle of the street so he could rush into the auditorium and make it just in time for his son's award ceremony. And his son, surprised to see his dad, smiles and sheds a tear. I never had a movie dad. It was never like that with my father. He never showed up to my award ceremony or performance at the nick of time. He arrived early with my mother, found a good seat, waited patiently until my name was called, and smiled proudly. My father not only attended every one of my basketball games, but he also showed up to every basketball practice. Despite our protests, my father was always home at 5:15 every day and weekends to work on our homework, and homework that we never got from school. And then after a business school interview, when I thought I completely screwed up on, My father was the first to call and tell me that it's okay and you did your best. Sometimes in life, you take all of this for granted because you could always count on that my father would always be there. He was my constant, my foundation, and one of my only stable fixtures in life. My father was at every important event in my life, but more important, my father was at every unimportant event of my life. Lesson 3, say I love you in your own way. I've always admired my father because inherently or innately, my father was never a very expressive man. He was not the type of person who will come over, gives his children a hug and a kiss, and tell them how much he loves them. It is just so hard to express himself like that because that wasn't the norms of his generation. But that doesn't mean I never felt his love. In fact, I always felt his love. I always wondered how he did it, but I couldn't figure out why. But I was always secure with my father's love. And a few days ago, my wife, Yuna, shared an email with me, an email that my dad had sent to her last year. And he wrote to her, "We love you very much because you have such a nice personality. We adore Charlotte because she is so cute. Tell Carter to keep up the good work at school. He is so proud of him." Could it be in his emails? I started going through my emails and texts from Dad over the last 10 years. He has peppered my emails and texts with phrases of, "I am so proud of you. I am so happy for you. We love you and we miss you." He will never say, "I love you," but he would always use we or they. He never felt comfortable verbally expressing his love, so he did it in a way where he can still say he loves me without verbally saying he loves me. That is the true magic of my father. The last few nights and wee hours of the morning, I would get teary-eyed remembering some of these stories I shared. As I start getting sad missing my father, my baby daughter Claire, who had a very bad case of jet lag, would stay up with me at 4 a.m. And she sees my concern and she would touch my cheek and smile. I looked at Claire and smiled because I know that my father has taught me what I needed to know to be a good husband and a good father. Thank you for listening to my stories. We have a few more coming from my father's closest friends and his loved ones. My father always spoke fondly of 3 phases in his life: his high school years, his college years, and his involvement with the San Fernando Valley Chinese Cultural Association. These lifetime friendships forged during his time helped him become a better husband, father, friend, and person. I would first like to bring up Zhou Guanan, Zhou Su. He was my father's high school classmate, college classmate, neighbor, and one of his closest friends. Bruce, Pam, and I grew up with Zhou Su as a fixture in our lives. And I'm so appreciative that he has agreed to speak more about my father. Zhou Su.
Old friend, Mintai, has had many success stories. And one of the successes, of course, is Kenneth. Such a wonderful son, and such an excellent speaker. You know that, Kenneth, you mentioned one of the things your father loved is San Fernando Valley Cultural Association. In fact, there are many parents from that association. And we all work together and trying to do the best for our children. And we're proud to have Kenneth as one of the graduates and one of the alumni. Very successful. And he's such an excellent speaker, as you can tell from today. In fact, we discovered that talent long ago. And some of you may remember, some of the past association annual banquet. And the MC was Kenneth. And he was one of the best MC we ever had for the association event. And, of course, Bruce and Pam, both are success stories. Biggest success, of course, is Wei Shu. Wow. never, tell enough of Mintai's success. And Ken mentioned that our two families were so close together. In fact, indeed, that's the case. And when Mintai moved his young family from Georgia to LA, and I was here waiting for him. And I even rented an apartment, for him, temporary stay before he found his house. And I helped him look for houses. And the houses they lived in the past 40, 50 years was one of the houses, we looked together. And by the way, that house was brand new. It was being built. And when Mintai set his eye on this brand new house, he said, "This is it. I've never lived in a new house before. I want to live in a new house." And they lived happily ever after. Anyway, our families were so close, and we're both living in the Chatsworth area, and our kids were growing essentially together, and play together, and I think their ages are more or less the same. My second daughter, my second child, Melissa, my first daughter actually, my son and my daughter, Melissa, is about a year younger than Kenneth, and my son is about a year older than Kenneth. So they're good playmates. And in fact, we share many dinners together, many lunches together, many picnics together. All right. And we share went outings together. And I still remember when Melissa, my daughter, was 3 or something like 3 or 4. Miss Candice was 4 or 5 or something. And Melissa said to my wife, "Well, I think in the future I'll take Candice as my husband." And of course, that never happened. I'm sure they're glad that didn't happen. They're both happy with their current family, of course. But you can tell that's how close they were. Anyway, and I'm not the oldest friend of Mintai, even though I started knowing him from the 6th grade. We attended same junior high and back then, by the way, junior high, high school, one school. Okay, so from 6th grade to 12th grade. All right, well, 7th grade. That's right. 7th grade to 12th grade. And we started together, we graduated together, then we went into the same college, all right, different majors. But during those high school years, from 7th grade to 12th grade, we were in the same class every day of the year. And of course, after college, we each went our own way, and we worked different places, but we never knew that we will get together again, because we both end up working in the Los Angeles area, actually end up in the San Fernando Valley area. And being close, our two families' houses are within walking distance of each other all these years. And but talking about old friend, and now the oldest friend, I know that 2 of the guests here are Mintai's elementary school friend, right? Mr. Chen, raise your hand, and Mr. Bian, raise your hand. And they probably know each other when they are still wearing, 所谓的开裆裤 and all these years and until later. And Mr. Chen and Mr. Ben, not only they attended same elementary school as Mintai, we were all in the same high school class for 6 years. Then they also went to the same college as Mintai. So they are the oldest friend, okay? And they got this from the elementary school years. And that's quite unusual. How many of you can claim you have a friend starting from elementary school? I don't think there are too many. Right? No, there's one. Okay, there's one, of course. And but anyway, and such a loving experience being a friend of Mintai. Mintai is such a nice person. Everybody loves him. Even from when we were little kids, till later, and all his friends here, and many of you know friends for many years, and you are here because you love him. In fact, everybody loves him. Mintai is such a nice gentleman. You know, it's very natural. He's so natural to you. You know, he's never, there's no pretension. He's very sincere. You know, it's always, you know, let you feel at home. So everybody loves him. Okay, and that's why he gathered so many good friends. And well, of course, talking about friends, and they are also some special friends too. You know that one of our guests here eventually turned out to be a roommate of Mintai. And when Mintai went to Tucson to work for the aerospace industry for a couple of years, and he went there very reluctantly. First of all, he doesn't like desert. All right? And you know, Tucson is surrounded by desert. And secondly, secondly, there's no good Chinese food. Right? Okay, so he decided to leave his family behind, still in Chatsworth, and just went there by himself. Fortunately, one of his old friends came to rescue. That's Mr. Tsai. Mr. Tsai went to Tucson with Mintai, and Mr. Tsai bought a house in Tucson, and he happily take Mintai in as his roommate. Well, you know that there are many good stories to tell. Many years ago, you know, there's a TV sitcom called Odd Couple, or a movie called Odd Couple. And, as I heard, it's based on their life real story. Of course, that's only a hearsay. I think their stories is even more interesting than the movies and than these TV sitcoms. But anyway, you can see that Mintai is friends of all walks of life, and there's just no end of telling things about Mintai. And I think I'm blessed, and I got to know Mintai as a close friend, and I got not only to know him as a close friend, I got to be so close to him for so many years, and so close to the family. I think better lesson.
Also talk a lot about his time at Taida. The NTU EE network has been such a valuable group of friends. And I still remember when I was young, I was in Santa Barbara. We had my father had one of the reunions, and families got together, and we had such a good time together. And I know that's another very special part of my father's life. And Mo Susu, is Mo Susu here? Hey, Mo Susu, it's so nice enough to come and speak to us as well. So Mo Susu.
I'm not that old, so I'm not the oldest friend of Mintai. I knew him 1960 at National Taiwan University, public department, new student orientations. Those days, orientation you sit according to the registration number.
Louder.
Hello? Yes, those days, the new student registration, sit according to the student registration number. He happened to be next to me. When he saw me, he said, "What bad luck? You again!" That's what I don't know. He said, "You, in the entrance exam, first is the math exam, you're so loud and making noise. Reduce my math score by at least 20 points." Or could be the head of the department, the number one. I said, "Yes, that's exactly true. I could be the head of the whole class." Anyway, so we become very, very good friends since then. Xiaobao is so gentle and decent and humble and nice and considerate. He never advocate boast himself like many of the others. Many of the others do that. When you were a teenager, you try to show how smart you are or how stupid you are. It's not at all. Then, the friend, then come to the United States. 1967, Christmas. He was working in a restaurant arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. I drove myself from Pasadena alone, go there, to chase a girl. And when I arrived there, the girl's not at home. Went out with her brother. I said, she abandoned me. I'm so sad. Xiaobao said. He counseled me, supported me, and I stayed with him for a whole week until Christmas time. And another roommate whom I shared a matrix on the ground is Zhang Baiqi, one of the old friends of Xiaobao, who made a friend here. So during that week there, he supported me, helped me so much. And toward the end, he said, oh, we're going to have a banquet for you and your girlfriend. So he had his roommate and his cousin prepare some good food. Then he went out. He said, hey, we need to have good napkin. Not the thick one, good napkin. It turned out he made a mistake. Bought all female napkins. Those days we do not know the difference. Thick napkin. After that, he went back to Los Angeles. I think when for about a year, we should come to States. Was Xiaobao here or stay in East Coast? When you came here, was Xiaobao in East Coast, right? Or already moved here? East Coast. And in fact, when we should come here, he's a teenager, literally a teenager. I think we'll pick her up and take them to Houston. We'll be there, so we'll drop them whatever. Finally, at the end of the day, we go pick them up. Very late. I said, how come it's so late? We'll be waiting here for quite a while. I said, I want you to exhaust all the rides. So he laughed. That's another story. Then, later on, it's a very, very unusual. It's unusual in the sense that Pam, the daughter, became good friend and neighbor of our daughter in Summit Hill. And the grandkid and our grandkid have played together and be friends. And I consider Xiaobao not one of my best friends. He gave me good favor and support me during a difficult time. As a matter of fact, my wife Barbara and we often talk with Xiaobao for many years. We don't live in the valley, we live across the mountain other side. Once with Xiaobao, I remember saying that, hey, you support me, if not for you, I won't be able to survive the whole thing. And I asked her, and I go there with Xiaobao. What would happen? I'm not sure she would come back. However, she said that it doesn't matter, she could come back anyway. So I could have spared that long trip. As Xiaobao, Zhang Baiqi, I remember one thing very clear. I was remember something. During 67 Christmas, the snowstorm was the highest, most severe in 92 inches of snow in Northridge. My drive leaving Huntsville, Xiaobao and Zhang Baiqi come out of the window, side story, wave me goodbye like this. I remember to see them wave me goodbye. Zhang Baiqi and Xiaobao. So I always remember that because I'll have to drive back to Los Angeles. And they say, ah, yeah, see. So, of course, our good friend Zhang Baiqi passed away a long time ago. And Xiaobao, I must say that I am so sorry to miss him. so sorry. I could have seen him 5 months ago at San Mateo, but I have to come back 1 day earlier. He even said that, how come you leave Zhongzhangkan? I said, I'll see you back in the valley. What's the big deal? Now it turned out, that's the last time I clearly talked to him on the phone. I am very sad, although, so you will live in our memory. For us, I'm sure you many other friends. Thank you.
After graduating from the National Taiwan University, my father moved to Georgia. And my father was the first in his family to immigrate to the United States. And during that time, it was an opportunity for my father to bring his extended family into the United States. And my cousin Scarlett moved to Georgia when she was 15. And Scarlett, to me, was never a cousin to me. She was always a big sister to me because she stayed with us pretty much my whole life. And how my father and mother view her as well as not as a niece, but as their own daughter as well. Scarlett is nice enough here to talk a little bit more about Dad.
Hi everyone. I'm Scarlett, was Bai Chun, his infamous niece. Mintai was 2 years younger than my mom, so I call him Jojo. When I was 15, my mom brought me over to the States, immigrated here, and I stayed with Jojo and Joma. And we landed in, I landed in, that was when he was still teaching in Savannah, Georgia. And that was even before Bruce was born. Knowing that my mom is going to be flying across Pacific Ocean in the United States, and that my grandparents will be soon immigrating to the States as well, to make it easier for the family to travel and cheaper for the airfare, Arjun decided to move to the West Coast. So we moved to LA that summer. Sorry. When we got to California, Arjun wanted to make sure that I go to a good school, good high school. Chatsworth was one of the best one in the valley. So he tightened his belt and bought that brand new house that they stayed in for the last 40-some years. Just because, so I could go and walk to school and make it easier for me and everybody else. So thank you, Arjujo, for treating me as your eldest daughter on day one, by giving me the best you could offer. When I got accepted to UCLA, he was the proudest person in the family. He would brag to all his friends here. I'm sure Susu Ai probably heard him talk about his niece got accepted to UCLA. So 1 year, towards the end of the freshman year, a friend of mine dropped me off from school and stayed for dinner. When this was on time, and this friend is Edwin, my husband for 37 years. So thank you, Arjujo, for picking a great husband for me. When my daughter Justina got accepted to Duke for an MBA degree, Arjujo was the most excited in the family. As he explained, Fuqua is one of the top 10 business schools in the States. And when my second daughter, Tiffany, got her law degree and accepted a job at Apple, Arjujo was the first person to read up on her 2 bosses and told me that those 2 are really experienced. Tiffany would really learn a lot from them. when I became a grandma over a year ago, I've been sending photos and videos of Nico in our family group chat, and Arjojo often comment and say how cute and smart Nico is. So thank you, Arjojo, for always looking out for all of us and show us your support. Arjojo had a wealth of knowledge in all subjects throughout his life. Thank you. Unlike him, I hated studying. I don't like studying. Memorizing history, geography was my worst nightmare. But do you know when Arjojo retired, what does he do in his spare time? He reads Chinese history. Not only that, he would have ancient Chinese map laid on the table. And I asked him, what are you doing? He says, those names are very old. I need to match the geography so I know what they're called nowadays. That's how hard study he was. And China was one of his favorite vacation spots. And many times when he visited those places, he knew more than the tour guide. And later on, after he had a stroke, the doctor told him he needed to do exercise, walking. And he didn't want to get sunburned, so he decided to walk in the house. But what did he do? He doesn't just walk, he's mumbling. And I said, Arjojo, what are you doing? He's memorizing Chinese poems from Tang Dynasty and Song Dynasty. And I'm like, Arjojo, you're impressive. So thanks, Arjojo, for demonstrating we could always live and learn. 活到老是可以学到老. Reflecting back over the years, I could only recall Arjojo raising his voice once when I was in high school. And that was only because I talked back to my grandpa at the dinner table. And later that night, he came to my room and apologized. But he explained to me that I should always be respectful to elders. And if any of you guys know me, I'm the loudest in this family, other than Kim. But Arjojo was always soft-spoken, with a smile on his face, watching us. And I truly believe there's no other family like ours that as children, we laughed at Arjojo, Arjoma, loudly. We joked with them happily. We yelled at them uncontrollably, but always with the deepest respect to Arjojo and Joma. So thanks, Arjojo, for showing us how to love. And Arjojo, thank you for taking me into your home and raised me as your own for the past 45 years. I love you, and I'll really miss you.
We move on to the next journey of my father's life, and Zhou Susu talked a little bit about his time at the Chinese Cultural Association in San Fernando Valley. My father helped organize a basketball team so his children can participate in sports. But what he didn't know was that the parents of these participants ended up being his close friends. The first person I would like to introduce is Mrs. Caroline Huang, Huang Ai, and I believe Huang Susu will be speaking on her behalf. And Huang Ai and Huang Susu's two sons were close friends of mine. We actually played in the same basketball team. And Mrs. Huang has always been like a second mother to us, always welcoming myself, my brother, my sister. So Mrs. Huang's nice enough to speak a little about my father.
The joke first, because I know how Mintai loves jokes. There's this tribal meeting talking about electing their next leader. And these are the rules. To become a leader, you need to jump from from a mountain into the river below, and there's a lot of hungry crocodiles there. So this is my son, Dennis. And so in order to become the next leader, you need to swim across the river and climb up on the shore, and then you can become the next leader. And before the announcer finished giving the instruction, and there was a pa-doom, someone jumped in. And to everybody's amazement, he fought the crocodile and luckily climbed up to the step, and everybody cheered and said, hooray, our next leader was here. But all they hear is from the other side of the river, someone was yelling, "Who pushed me?" And I want you to know, I am that person when I became Chinese school principal. And the person that pushed me, guess who? But truthfully, I am so thankful to Mintai and for his friendship and his support all throughout the years. It's been 40-some years. I talked to my brother today, and I said, was telling him what a regret that we have, that we lost Mintai. And I said, he has been a brother to me. And my own brother said, probably more so than him. And come to think of it, 40-some years means a lot in our lifespan. And I learned from Mintai so many valuable things, as you were all told. But two things stood out. One is he taught me in the successful community needs a lot of nameless heroes, such as Mintai. Mintai is always quietly doing things for everybody and not showing off and not asking for credit. And secondly, he taught me the urgency of us carrying the torch for our Chinese 5,000-year history and arts. And those are some of the things we learned from him. And he is known to be very thoughtful and friendly. And I used to tease him. I said, he's the one that can talk to the telephone pole. And no problem. So, and you can see his family, such a happy, harmonious family. And the children are extraordinarily friendly, hospitable, warm, I just love these people. So, and I thought about Mintai is like the star in the sky. He doesn't have the heat and scorching heat like the sun, and he's not lonely and icy like the moon, but he's that little warm star in the sky that shines on for all of us at night. And I sure would miss him. Thank you.
Close friend, Dr. Mark Tsai, his two sons, older sons, played basketball with my brother Bruce. And they, during this time, became very close friends, almost like brothers. And, you know, Dr. Tsai was also a fixture in our lives. I can't imagine my childhood without Dr. Tsai. Dr. Tsai has also, is also nice enough to speak with us today about that. Dr. Tsai.
Well, it's been an honor to be invited to speak for Mintai. I have known him for about 35 years, since I came from Texas, Los Angeles. Well, since I was told this is a celebration of life, so I'm going to skip all the phrases and we all know people are talking about it. So I will just give you some examples of what are the examples of celebration that Mintai and I enjoyed in the last 35 years. Besides taking care of the family and dealing with friends. I can give you 3 examples. The first one is that we know so well is eating. You know, because Mintai has a very good taste of food, and he does not eat that often. He also married the best chef, Wishu. So I get to enjoy some of Wishu's cooking, and also the family members. Your cousin, your aunt, and they are all very good at eating good food. So I was able to eat good food in Taiwan, in Hacienda Heights, in Monterey Park, and here in the valley. Of course, in your home too. I can countless occasions enjoying good food. We were still talking about eating months ago, and all of a sudden it's happening. So I'm going to only enjoy eating with him in my dreams. But eating good food is the number one, joyful occasion that we celebrate in Thai's life. It is also good for me too, because I love to eat. The second thing that we enjoy the same is reading classic literature, Chinese poems, and Tang Shi, Song Ci. And the few months just before the shutdown for the pandemic, we were still talking about how to read. And the Tang Shi at that time, I was into Du Hu. Du Hu is Chinese Shi Sheng. Is the sacred person in Chinese poetry. 宋词. He and I we were really into 苏轼, 苏东坡. So we were going some of their masterpieces either in person or on the phone. And that was just at the beginning of the pandemic. And I really had a fun memory of those times that we were discussing a word or the meaning of the whole piece. The third thing I want to mention is symbolized by playboy. Actually, Mr. Pao encouraged me to continue to read playboy. And if you consider that as a celebration of life, that's good. We all use the imagination to celebrate. And of course, we have the best wives and the children already. So that turned out to be a meaningful activity. The poetry and the food, I'm really enjoying all that. Of course, Mintai and I would also both like geography and history, especially ancient Chinese history. So we also spend some time reading the Chinese history and Chinese geography. Also planning some trips. But unfortunately, it won't happen. But I had to say, I had many wonderful trips with Mintai and his family. For that, I thank you all.
Was in the hospital a few weeks ago. His last words were wanting to see his grandchildren. His grandchildren meant the world to him. And we have a nice little presentation from Kelsey Powell, which is Bruce's daughter, and Sydney Lee, which is Pam's daughter.
Hello, I'm Sydney. And I'm Kelsey. Well, Mintai was a grandmother. We are here today to talk a little bit about how great of a grandfather he was to us and all the other grandchildren. A few years ago, Sydney and I came up with a nickname for him. We called him Diego because I called him Yeye and Sydney called him Michael. We kind of combined the names into one, and we will continue to call him this throughout the rest of the speech. Every time the family gathered together, such as during the holidays, Yegong would watch us play, have fun, and make art. He always said that he felt warmer when the whole family was in the house. But now it feels so empty without him laughing and commenting on our amateur game. In special events, we would choreograph dances and shows for Yegong and the rest of the family. And even though our dance moves weren't always too sharp, he still seemed to enjoy them every time. And this was always so encouraging for all of us.
Though he was tired, Yegong always tried to be present so he could be with us. He really wanted to see us grow up, go to college, get married, and have kids.
Even though we will miss him so much, we are so grateful for his work, commitment, and encouragement. And I think those are the things that will help us push on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Saying she and I are the loudest person in the generation. In our next generation, which is our children, the most outgoing one is Cameron Lee. Cameron is Pam and Peter's son. And Cameron has something to say about Grandpa, right? Cameron?
And I am Michael's grandson. I love him very much. And when I do this, it would always make him laugh.
The floor to anybody that might want to speak to my father. Is there anyone that would like to come up and say something?
When I got home or just came over, he would say that he loved all his grandchildren, every one of us, not because of our abilities, not that we got the highest grade in our math class and anything very much like that. It was because he loved our personality. He said out of everything, the most important thing was our personality. We couldn't do the world, like, it was so much easier to go through the world with a better personality than not. And that was like one of the greatest things for him was our personality. To have a great personality is the most important thing. Thank you.
My brother Bruce. They are replicas of each other. They both study electrical engineering, succeeded in school, claustrophobic, get nauseated at the sight of blood, and they also have a high moral character, loves his family, their family, and is always dependable, and has so much love to share. Bruce has a few words to say about that.
I'd like to thank everyone coming today and helping celebrate my father's memory. When my father passed away, I was heartbroken. Papa and I were very close, and he was such a big part of my life. I didn't know quite how to remember him or the kind of person he was today, but I thought I'd try by well, my dad wasn't, as many of you know, wasn't too serious about himself. So I thought I'd try by sharing kind of the 3 questions I've heard my dad ask the most throughout my life. The first, and by far, his favorite question was, how much did it cost? If you know my dad, you know that he wants to know how much everything costs. If I treated him to dinner, bought him a sweater, went on vacation with my family, he had to know how much did it cost. Sometimes he'd come over to our house and he would just randomly point at things and say, how much did that cost? That's because Baba really liked seeing a good deal. I used to think it was because he was very frugal. After all, he once wore the same pair of shoes for about 8 years because he didn't think it was worth the money it wasn't necessary to spend more money on a new pair. But over time, I understood it had nothing to do with frugality. Baba, well, when I was young, every time I needed a new pair of basketball shoes, Baba always insisted that I buy a nicer, more expensive pair. Interestingly, he didn't think it was necessary to buy new shoes for his tired feet, but spending any amount of money on my well-being, that to him was a good deal. That was my father. When it came to happiness, he counted it so cheaply for himself, but valued it so highly for others. And that's what made him so special to all of us. The second question that my father liked to ask was, how did you do? As in, how did you do on a test, in a job interview, or at work? I asked because he wanted me to see how education and hard work were paying off. Once a teacher, as someone has mentioned already, Baba believed that education and hard work provides a path to self-reliance and a productive life. He wanted us, the kids, to read, be curious, and have ideas of our own. As a result, there was no limit to what Baba would do to ensure we were committed to our studies. I remember when I was studying electrical engineering in college, Baba spent countless hours, days, nights tutoring me on math and science. On nights before my exams, Papa would be so stressed for me, he could hardly sleep. In the end, my college degree is as much his as it is mine. Papa didn't have aspirations of leaving a vast fortune to his children, although that would have been nice. Instead, his parting gift was priceless. He taught us how to learn, build things, and be independent. The third thing that Baba liked to ask me was, are you happy? 你高兴吗? He started asking me this in my adult years, and he didn't care to hear about money or accomplishments. He wanted to know simply, was I content? To him, contentment was is the only real wealth. He didn't want me to lose sight of that and believe that a full life comes from purpose and meaningful relationships with family, friends, community, something that he's invested in throughout his life, as many people have mentioned already. On the day, or rather on the night before Baba passed away, I was alone with him at the hospital. I stayed overnight with him. By that time, Baba was very weak and frail. His spine was fractured and his lungs were losing function. The doctor had told us that Baba wouldn't survive the day. He was dying. Baba could barely speak. And it was sad to see him in a state where his breathing was reduced to short and shallow gasps. But that night, he still asked me one last time, 你高兴吗? And I cried because I was moved. I didn't. Baba only had a few last breaths left in him, and so he wanted to know that I was happy. So I said, Baba, you just saved your breath. You gave us everything that we need to be happy. You took good care of your family. Baba nodded and said, oh. He looked around. He was looking for Mama and Pam, who had been there all evening. And he asked me in a very faint voice, where's Mama, Mei? And I told him, Mama, Mei had to leave the hospital. The ICU doesn't allow this many people to stay overnight. So Mama and Mei, they had to rent a hotel room down the street. Baba was still struggling to breathe, but I could tell he had something important he wanted to say. So I leaned in, and he wanted to know, how much did the hotel room cost? That's Baba. At the end, he still wanted to hear of a good deal. There's one more thing I do want to say. On his deathbed, Baba expressed how proud he was of his 3 children. Not Ken, not Pam, not me, but the 3 children who married into our family, Jackie, Peter, and Yuna. He knows of the sacrifices that you've made for our family. And he told me he was very grateful to you, that you've always treated and loved him like he was your own father. He found solace in knowing that he was leaving his children, his actual children, with 3 wonderful spouses who are as loving and selfless as his own wife had been for 54 years. We'll miss you, Papa. Thank you for listening.
Every time my father would see my sister, there was a light, a twinkle in his eyes. Outside of my mom, my sister was the love of his life. And you could see that, and I always saw that in Pam as well. Pam?
Thank you. I did tell Ken that I thought it was fitting that I would be the last to go because I'm the last of his children. I'm also the favorite, so gotta save the best child for last, right? So my dad was always really great at writing sweet little notes to us through text or email, letting us know how much he missed us, or how he was thinking of us, or telling us how precious our children were. When I look back on our life with him, I realized that he left us a love letter, an even greater love letter through all the little things and big things that he did and that he said to us. My dad's love letter was filled with sacrifices that saturated our childhood. For instance, when we were kids, when we went camping, in spite of his own fear of heights, he drove along windy roads flanked by cliffs to get us to a campsite. Albeit at 20 miles per hour and on a one-lane highway, and to the sound of honking horns of the 50 cars that accumulated behind him in bumper-to-bumper traffic. But he did it, and he bravely did it. I see it when my dad left for Tucson for 2 years, all by himself, without his family, and how much time he spent how he spent hours on flights to get back home to us every single weekend. And his sacrifices are manifested in the happy memories we had growing up, camping, traveling, and spending weekends with our dear friends in the basketball community, and of our childhood, and now our children, happy memories of our childhood and now our children, in this warm house that he labored hardly for us. And his love letter was filled with reinforcements of his love for us and assurances that we were taken care of. In 2015, my dad called me the night before his bypass surgery. There was only a 5% chance that he would not survive the surgery. But if you know my dad, despite being an expert in statistics, he doesn't chance anything. And he wanted to make sure that he spoke what he thought would be his last words to me. He wanted me to know that I had done well, that he loved our family so much, and that he was at peace knowing that Peter would take care of our family. What he thought were his parting words that night were not new to me. They were sentiments that were expressed to me repeatedly over a lifetime. His love letter was also filled with due diligence that he did into our lives. You see, my dad loved researching the things that were important to him in his life. China, his health, the stock market. But his biggest research project was our families. On our frequent calls during the week, on my way to and from work, these conversations were filled with topics like how much I had been eating and sleeping, what we were eating for dinner that night, how Peter was, how are the kids liking their new school, how much was our gas bill for that month, what my company's stock price was. My dad's love letter wasn't just to his children, but also to his grandchildren. We were my dad's pride and joys until our children came along and we were immediately replaced by them. Though he grew more tired and less mobile in the last few years, these limitations never got in the way of his enthusiasm and vigor for his grandchildren, which only seemed to energize him. And he continued to fight with all that he had to have as much time as he could with these grandchildren. Peter, Sidney, and Cameron, we unknowingly were gifted with the last 3 weeks of my dad's life in our home. And he's left us with a beautiful memory of him sitting in his favorite seat at our breakfast table, soaking in all the sunlight and the kids' stories when they came back from school, and beaming as he watched them do their schoolwork or dance in the breakfast area. At this table a few weeks ago, Sydney brought an essay assignment to me and her Waigong to proofread. My version came back with comments in big red ink all over the paper, telling her ways how she could improve her paper. Meanwhile, Waigong's version came back with, "Oh, this is the most well-written essay I've ever read." He was just always ready with praises for his grandchildren. And at that same table, my dad watched and broke out in that big smile of his at the sight of Cameron shaking his behind, just like you saw a few minutes ago. After this, my dad, who's usually a very rational man, except when it comes to his grandkids, always told me what a cute boy he was. In closing his tender letters to us on the day he passed, and it would be the saddest day of my life, despite barely having any energy to speak, he whispered to us to be happy after his passing. Even in his final moments, our happiness was everything to him. With this beautiful legacy he's left us, I know we can be happy again, but I also know it'll never be the same without him. His love letter to us is one that I wished would never end, but it's one that I know will never stop reading. Thank you.
Special thanks to Jackie's sister, Patty Davis, who put together all the centerpieces together for us. They're beautiful, and thank you so much. And we also want to especially thank our cousins, Scarlett, Alex, Melissa, for being with us at the hospital and coming over frequently to help us get through this difficult time. Finally, the Pao family would like to share our final tribute to our father, a little video and picture montage of my father and his family and his friends. I want to thank Scarlett, Bruce, and Pam, who spent countless hours going through old photo albums, scanning the pictures, and aggregating these special moments of my dad. So without further ado, here it is. we are going to have a reception afterwards. So if I can ask all of you to move to the terrace, and we will move the tables into the room here so we could have dinner. Over dinner, my family would love to hear more stories about my father. It's been such a wonderful experience hearing them today, and I hope you could share some of them with us later tonight. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you very much.